3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. It's Jane Rachel. I'm here today with Katie, an amazing young woman who's got an inspiring story about how she fought back from gaslighting doctors. So, Katie, I'm just going to let you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what happened.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Jane. I have watched some episodes and I find it very inspiring, your project and the mission, and it's obviously close to my heart as this is something that's affected me.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, several years ago, I woke up in the middle of the night with what I thought might be a heart attack. I was very young. I was in my young 20s.
Oh my gosh.
And felt searing pain in my chest and in my back. And I sat up and freaked out, basically. It subsided a bit, but the next day it came back in the morning. I went to urgent care and I was told that I had an ulcer, a stomach ulcer. This was dumb. I probably should have had a primary care physician, but I was young and stupid.
No,
Also, they never did anything for me anyway.
Yeah, and you did what most of us would do: go to urgent care.
Yeah, I was spooked. It was too weird. I mean, it was such an intense pain, like an anvil on my chest almost.
And you had never felt it before?
No, God, no.
Okay.
So yeah, they were like, you have an ulcer. So it was weird for me. I was just out of college and working my full-time job, which was, I guess, stressful to be trying to pay rent in Boston and working a new job and being young, whatever, but not stressful, like ulcer stressful. So it was kind of confusing. And then my doctor that I found as a result sort of verified this. She was surprised, but verified. And everybody was telling me, relax, take some salt baths, take some time off of work. Watch Love Actually was a actual prescription that I received.
I mean, this is your story, so I'm like trying to keep my mouth shut, but just I can't tell you how many doctors told me to relax. And I tried to relax, but when there's pain for no reason, it's hard to relax.
It's really hard to relax, yeah. And so I'm forcing myself into hot baths, right? Meanwhile, my pain's getting like worse. And it started turning into nausea, more heartburn, nausea, and that crushing chest pain when I was lying down. And I really couldn't figure it out. And I kept going back to this doctor who would give me, she gave me heartburn medicine, like antacids, prescription strength, and nausea meds, prescription strength. And it didn't really help. I'd be so nauseous that I'd be salivating, but I couldn't vomit.
Oh my gosh, sounds terrible.
And it was bad. I couldn't really sleep well because it was worse when I was lying down. Eventually it became they gave me an endoscopy, right? Endoscopy is the one with the, yep. So they gave me that.
Yep. But let me just back up. When they told you you had an ulcer in the first place, was that based on any tests or is that just?
Oh, no.
They said, no. Oh, you have an ulcer.
They were like, this sounds vaguely like an ulcer. So actually, right, that's right. Good point. Before the endoscopy, they gave me a blood test to find H. pylori, which I suppose is what causes an ulcer. Is that right? I think that's right.
It could, there might be more than one cause, but I would imagine people have that without having an ulcer, or could have an ulcer and doesn't mean that's the cause of this pain.
Right. But I think they were looking for a correlative, some sort of cause. And when they did not find that, that's when they gave me the endoscopy, which they were like, oh yeah, there's no ulcer down there. So, okay. They did find a hiatal hernia.
Yeah,
and
I have that.
Do you?
I do. I think a lot of people have that. So
it's not great, but
yeah. And I had it really young too.
Did you?
Early 20s.
Okay.
But I still don't think that's the cause of that type of searing pain. No way.
Right. And so, that's when I was like, this is really messed up. So by this time it had been probably 4 months of me going to the doctor, trying these medicines, nothing working. I got progressively more nauseous every day. I could eat less and less. It was losing weight. Talked to my dad, who said I struggled with heartburn, nausea, and that pain like a heart attack for decades. And finally, they figured out that it was my gallbladder. And so, Katie, you have to go and get your gallbladder tested. So I went to my doctor and I said, test my gallbladder. And she said no. She told me that that is for overweight old men and that it definitely wasn't that. She probably tested me for pregnancy again at that time. I think during this 6 months it was that I was sick, I must have been tested for pregnancy 4 times, which was really cool.
And it's not like pregnancy usually causes that kind of searing pain.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And
like,
nothing had changed. Like
right.
even if I had become pregnant in the 4 months, it was just wild. And it felt really bad. Like, oh yeah, it's probably somehow about my vagina, right? Like it's probably because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
Which maybe that was me reading into it, but that's how it felt at the time. Yeah, so she wouldn't do it. She would not test my gallbladder.
And you told her about your dad, like that there could be
Yeah.
a genetic component and all of that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. And I was
and-
just too young and too female. So we tried another heartburn medicine or whatever we did, right? And meanwhile, I'm doing my own tests. So I've done some studying and have found out that the gallbladder regulates bile production, which you need when you eat fatty food. So I would set myself up in a little controlled environment and eat something disgusting and terrible, and then become really sick.
oh my God.
And then the next day would avoid fats altogether and dairy and would feel better. And so I was becoming more certain. And eventually my doctor agreed after I think like a strongly worded email to give me a test. And she gave me an ultrasound. And there was no indication to her that I was having gallbladder issues because there were no gallstones. So I'm like, well, that can't be right. Like, I was almost devastated. Like, I wanted this so badly to be it.
Yes.
I didn't want to be like sick with gallstones, but I wanted to have something because these people were making me feel insane.
Yes. Yes.
So,
And again, I don't want, it's like your story and I don't want to interrupt, but I remember those feelings. I remember like,
right?
I came a long time ago. I thought I had a pituitary tumor, which I did not. I had other things causing those symptoms.
Mhm.
And I remember just crying in devastation when the MRI results. And my mom just looked at me and said, you're crazy. Like, who wants a brain tumor? And I'm like, I don't want the brain tumor. I want
the
to
answer.
know, I want the answer. So I just, because the doctors start to make you like think you're crazy.
Yeah.
When they tell you, you're not feeling something or that it's stress, when it's unbelievable pain. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
And that you'll feel better if you watch a Scarlett Johansson movie or whatever,
exactly.
right?
Or take an Epsom salt bath.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's like unbelievable. And so I was upset and couldn't figure it out. And then, kind of talked to my dad again, consulted the internet again. I mean, and for as like much shit, can I say that on here?
Yes, you can.
I'll say garbage. For as much garbage is on the internet, people are reaching out to connect with each other about this stuff.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that's right. Like there are other things that aren't stones that could be affecting an organ. And what other tests exist? So I found out that there was a test where you drink a liquid. I'm sorry that I probably should have researched what all this stuff is actually called.
I can look it up later, no worries.
But the test where you drink the liquid that's like almost radioactive, and they put you in the machine and they watch your body process.
Yep.
And I remember lying there in the hospital after I finally convinced my doctor to order that. No, that's not right. That's not what happened. Oh my God. I didn't convince my doctor. So that's right. Sorry that I totally messed up my.
That's okay. So you had a good one. So that doctor said just wouldn't do it, right?
She just wouldn't do it. Yeah,
it's
not gallstones. It's just heartburn. This is normal. Watch your diet. So I was convinced after I learned that this test existed that that's what I needed and that I had to send myself into the full gallbladder attack that I knew I could have because I had been doing my own tests at home and at restaurants near my house. And that's when someone would see like the extent of my pain, like could see me salivating, trying to vomit and sweating and
Yeah.
doubled over. So in my neighborhood in Brighton, Massachusetts, there's St. Elizabeth's Health Center with an emergency room. And I went to a delicious greasy spoon and ordered like a big ass double cheeseburger.
Oh my
And I was just
God.
doing it, right? I did it
Yeah.
on a Friday night so that I could be there as long as I could. And I
Was
ate this burger and
was someone
walked
with
in.
you?
Yes, my boyfriend at
Okay.
the time was with me.
Okay, good.
And I did, yeah, I just ate this nasty burger and walked into the ER and told them I was having a heart attack because that's the only way that they would know that my symptoms were real, right?
Yeah.
Was
So
I
wait,
tested for pregnancy? Probably.
after you after you ate that burger, did you have those symptoms? Like, were
Oh
you in
yeah.
that? Yeah, like, so
Yeah.
was it kind of immediate?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
totally, it was always immediate. I mean, and I still can sometimes feel that like, okay, this is really bad. Obviously my symptoms are way better now, but so yeah, so I walked in, told them I was dying, basically. And they asked me about my family history, whatever. And I told them, and I acted like this hadn't been something that I'd been dealing with for 6
Yeah.
months. Because they'd probably put me in a cell, right?
Yeah.
So they said, oh, it might be your gallbladder. and and they gave me the test. They sent me home that night, but they ordered a test where they would check out my organs. And that the test that I had seen online. And I remember lying in that tube where after drinking the radioactive liquid and watching as it gets to a certain, so I could barely see the monitor next to me with all my internals, which was super weird and I don't really recommend it. But I could see that blue liquid moving through my system and then like stopping somewhere. And it was like all
Wow.
lit up like a Christmas tree. It was
Oh
very
my
strange.
gosh.
And then, they sent that test to my primary care and she gave me a call and told me that I had had gallbladder disease and the organ had died inside of my body probably months prior. And we had to get it out right away to stop my symptoms.
Wait, was this the same primary care doctor or was
Oh,
it
yeah.
someone else?
Mhm.
Was she apologetic in the call or
No,
anything?
God, no.
Really?
Mhm.
Did she ever say she was sorry?
She mentioned it later, like, we never really see this. I can't believe, like, that's so crazy. You're so young and so healthy and, fit. I don't think the
Wow.
word sorry or apologies was mentioned. I think I mean, I'm sure she didn't feel great about it, but
Wow. So then when you had it removed, did it magically go away or like, so what happened? They
yeah,
had,
there were other like symptoms as a result from not having it anymore, like bile just
yeah.
I was definitely more acidic, but I was never nauseous. It was immediately, I definitely had to watch my fat intake for a while and still do, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But that chest pain, the back pain, the overwhelming nausea, all that
It's-
was gone, just gone.
Wow. This is, I mean, and before we started this interview, or you were like, I didn't find my story that inspiring, or I didn't fight back. Like, this is, to me, this is heroic because, you were, I mean, you did like your own test and showed
Yeah,
up.
I think that's generous. I mean, to me, like heroic would have been if I didn't have to like send myself into like a gallbladder attack.
But
But
I mean,
if it were somebody else taking the same measures of trying to advocate for themselves, like, yeah, I guess. But what else are we supposed to do?
exactly. And I think going to like the emergency room instead, like if I wish when I look back at some of my history, sometimes like I waited to go see my regular doctor. And I think if I had gone to the emergency room, I think I actually might have gotten better care.
Yeah.
The trick is to just keep, one doctor blows you off, keep going. Like I was told, for years, I was told I have this illness called myasthenia gravis, and I was told you can't have it. You're not weak enough. And finally, I was just like, I went to as many doctors as I could and said, just test me for the damn disease. And finally, one of them did just shut me up. And sure enough, I had it. Is it something like, do you know, like, have you done any research since then? Like, is it at all common, or is it an extremely rare condition? Like, is your doctor right that people your age don't usually
Um,
have it? Or
I have had a couple of friends who have had their gallbladder removed since then, and my friends are my age. I'll say they're both males, so I think that maybe I am super unique in that way. Um, but you don't have to be overweight, evidently. You don't have to be over 60, evidently.
yeah.
Um, Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I think sometimes the problem in medicine too is like, even if, like, let's say over 80% and 90% of people fit a certain profile, like that's what they're trained and that's what they memorize.
Yeah.
And 90% seems really high, but that means you're going to miss 10 out of 100 people. So
Yeah.
they need to look at all, maybe the
Yeah.
ulcer is the most likely one, but then you check. And once that's ruled out, you need to keep looking until you find something. And your doctor clearly didn't do her due diligence.
That's right. And you would know way more about this than I do, but I think there's something really gendered about the way that medical research happens, and especially about the language that we use.
Yep.
Like, a woman is stressed out because she's a woman and she's,
Yep.
spoofing. And so she's got the ulcer. And I think too, like, I probably, if I could go back, I would have been a lot more pushy in person with my doctor. But I think that societally, we're sort of, women shouldn't complain
Yep.
or curse about how badly it hurts or make these tears visible.
Yep.
And I think going to the ER and having that level of drama allowed me to be like, to actually be free about what I was expressing. And I think that, being a little older now, I would feel a lot more liberated and being myself and demanding the medical attention that I deserve.
Yeah.
But as a very young woman, it's really difficult to think that you know anything.
I got to be honest. So, like, I consider myself now an advocate for patients. And even recently, I had an experience where after I walked out, I was really mad at myself, where I was like, I should have walked. I said, this doctor disrespected me.
Mhm.
I should have walked out of that office and I should have made a scene. And sometimes I do that, but I didn't. So, like,
Yeah.
there's something about the environment, like, with
Yeah,
a
there's a
male
power
doctor.
dynamic there,
There's exactly. So even, as younger, when I was younger, I didn't speak up at all, but even now I get mad at myself for
Yeah.
not speaking up. And I myself have celiac disease now, myasthenia gravis. And my entire life, doctors were just like, you need to relax. I could tell they thought I was neurotic. I could, like, if I had $100 for every time a doctor told me I needed to relax,
Mhm.
I'd be extremely rich. So, but I think your story is just so empowering. I hope that people don't have to do that, like put themselves into, a state and go to the
Yeah.
emergency room. But I think the fact is you were going to get that test one way or another. You knew where you were right, and you
Yeah.
were going to get the test. Before we close, just any advice for either other young women or patients in these situations, or for doctors?
Yeah, I think for patients and especially young women, you're right. You know your body, you're making the right decisions. What you think you feel it. And everybody will tell you things to make you doubt yourself. Don't. Um, there's something there. Yeah. When you know, you know. For doctors, am I allowed to curse again? No.
You are allowed to curse, because I feel like cursing now just from
No,
listening.
I mean, yeah, I think for doctors, remember that, like this, like what you said, what you know is the tip of the iceberg, and what you only think you know, right? And that everybody is having a very unique experience. And I really respect people who care for other people professionally. And I think that should be, I think that's the operative word, is care. And like, how can we be empathetic and understand that just because someone's situation doesn't fit into a bubble that we learn in a school. I work with lawyers, and I think lawyers and medical professionals are similarly trained to do this, like things fit into certain pathways. You're a lawyer too, right?
Yep.
So, and I respect it, I see it, I acknowledge it, but if we can all do our best, I think, to expand our our focus from being so narrow and think about the ways that we can, make sense of things through empathy and listening rather than what we've been trained, the ways in which we've been trained to think.
I'm going to end it right here only because that was just an absolutely perfect way to end. It's like for the patient to speak up, no matter how many times they try to silence us,
Mhm.
we keep speaking. And the doctors, it's about caring and listening and empathy. And
Yeah.
I'm incredibly impressed with your story, Katie. So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for having me.